Now, this week, Dublin made their official appointment. They have swapped Galway for Galway. Matty Kenny exiting their hurling management position, and he's going to be replaced by the 2017 All-Ireland winning boss with the tribesman Micheal Donoghue. His backroom team is effectively in place as well, bringing with them Franny Ford and Noel Larkin, and Shane O'Brien, the former Westmeath boss, will be both the Dublin under-20 hurling manager for this season and also a selector with the senior squad as well. And Micheal Donoghue will be in charge of the Dublin hurlers for the next 3 seasons. Delighted to say that we've got 2/3 of the hurling pod here now. We've got James Skehill, who kept goal in 2017 when Galway won the All-Ireland title. Skehill, how are you getting on?
I'm very well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I mean, the first reaction in the WhatsApp, we're on a slight hiatus with the pod at the moment, but we still talk about these appointments and the managerial merry-go-round that's happening at the moment. Straight away, you were like, Dublin have made a really good appointment here.
They have, and I suppose my reaction in the in the WhatsApp group was a bit.
It's not for radio.
It's not for radio, but let's just say I was sorry to lose Micheal to an opposing county. Put it that way to you. I just think it's a really good appointment on their behalf. It's a shrewd bit of business to not only get Micheal, but also get a vast majority of the management team from 2017 as well in Noel Larkin and Franny Ford. And there also seems to be a bit of a plan in place in having a connection there with Shane O'Brien being the under-20 manager. So you'd imagine that over the couple of years that he'd garner even more top level senior inter-county experience and then take over the mantle after that. I know it's a long way down the line, but it's just a really good appointment on Dublin's behalf. And from a Galway perspective, I know we have a Kilkenny man in charge of our own team at the moment, but being selfish, I'm sorry to see him go.
Yeah, well, truth be told, a couple of seasons ago when Micheal Donoghue left, you had actually wanted him to stay on, didn't you?
I did, and I was a very strong advocate for that, to be honest. I wanted him and all the other he's members of the management team and the backroom staff to stay on, because I just think they created a winning formula. Now, we didn't win every game, obviously, we didn't win every championship, but we certainly had the fundamentals there and a really good backroom team to try and help us to succeed. And I think he's bringing that to Dublin with him. Now, who he gets in his greater backroom team will remain to be seen, but he's got 2 really, really strong people, 2 excellent coaches, 2 shrewd operators, and people who've done it at numerous levels, and predominantly senior level also. So it's very rare that you can go and get not alone an Ireland willing manager, but an Ireland willing backroom team to back it up as well with it. That's a strong statement of intent from Dublin.
Give us an insight then into what they changed when they came in the winter of 2016, because it's well documented that you guys had come quite close from the 2012 period through to then, had a few near misses in All-Ireland finals, and then ultimately decided by the players that you wanted to change, and Anthony Cunningham left. What did Micheal Donoghue and his management team bring when they came in?
Do you know, you hear an awful lot about standards. You hear this, it's like a buzzword when you hear about successful teams, that they create standards, and everyone will refer to, let's say, a team of example like the All Blacks, whereby they set standards, whether it be on the pitch or off the pitch, and they exceed everybody else. And I won't say he did that from the off, but he certainly gave us that in his first day, that's what was his intention, and he gave everyone a fair shot. He said he wasn't going to drop anyone from the year previous, so everyone was starting from the same line. There was no airs or graces about players who had a higher standing than others. Everyone had the same shot, and he just created this I suppose, operation throughout, whereby everyone was expected to be better. And that's very easy for me to say, but the standards were raised in training. The players were challenged a whole lot more. The emphasis was put on the players to cater for more responsibilities themselves, and that in the heat of battle, let's say, it was our team, it was the players' team, and not to be looking for, I suppose, excuses, to be honest, looking for excuses or reasons as to why you lost or reasons as to why you weren't good enough or couldn't compete. He just said that the players were in control of this and that he'd steer the ship. He'd often say that they're the facilitators, the players are the main thing, so he put the major onus on the players and then tried to facilitate as the best he can with putting good people in the back room.
Now, when it comes to Dublin, the argument to be made that Galway had a generational talent in Joe Canning. There was a group of players there who had come very close to getting to the top of the mountain, and maybe it's taken over a different group of players, and probably a group of players who've got a very different set of ambitions to what would have happened when he initially went in Galway. Mm-hmm. But is any of what he brought into your camp transferable now to what Dublin are going to have in the next 3 seasons?
Oh, look, I'll be frank about this, okay? I don't beat around the bush, so... When he came into Galway, we were off the back of a couple of our Ireland final appearances. You could say we were close, we weren't that close. We had contested Leinster finals, etc., and won them, and contested national leagues and won them, etc. So, you could say that Galway were in a position to contend every year, or at least very close to it. Dublin, I think you're in a different situation entirely. And it's when I heard about the appointment first, yes, it was initially, I'll be honest, a bit disappointment to lose a lad of his calibre out of the county. But then I started thinking, what's the objective here? Like, what's the successful season for Dublin look like when Micheal takes over? And I think there'll be wholesale change, not to the group of players or the team, but I just think the whole structure and how they operate. And I don't know where we see much out of Dublin, where we see an awful kick in the first year, because I don't know, are they capable of it? To be honest, like they've let me see now, to my memory, in their history, they've 8 or 9 All-Stars. I think that's the reason of what they've produced. Like the last Ireland was over, 80 years ago, give or take. So I think people have to be realistic. What can Dublin actually provide next year? What's their targets? And if you're going to say because Micheal has been brought in, yes, an excellent manager, but they're going to challenge Limerick straight away, everyone just slow the roll a small bit, slow the roll. I think this is a project where he needs time to implement his own stance, he's implement his own game plan, his style. And as I said, I don't think he'll see a huge amount of improvement in year 1. I think it's year 2, year 3, whereby he'll get Dublin to a certain level and hope they can kick on from there.
We've spoken about Eoghan O'Donnell a few times on the pod, and the fact that he committed to the footballers for this summer, and realistically he's going to have a decision to make at the end of this calendar year, whether he goes in to play hurling or to play football for next year. Was hurling captain last season, such an important player, key cog to their defence? In all likelihood he'd probably be an impact sub if he stays with the footballers like we saw during the summer. Does it maybe make his decision a little bit easier to go back in with the hurlers if he knows there's a top class management team there for next year?
Yeah, I think it certainly helps. I think if, like you said, if a manager who didn't have maybe the same resume as Micheal and his guys had came in, you might see Eoghan O'Donnell just kind of tailor over towards the footballers. But where you got a manager team like this now, I think it'd be very disappointing from a Dublin hurling perspective in general that if Eoghan went with the footballers only and kind of, I won't say abandoned the hurlers, but left the hurlers and chose to go with the footballers. It's entirely his own choice, but I'd be disappointed as a hurling man as well if he didn't go with the hurlers. You're just being selfish in that front. He's one of the best fullbacks in the country, captain of the Dublin team, so he'd be a monumental loss to them. I think the first thing they'll do is try start an element of recruitment, if I'm honest. I think they'll try obviously secure Eoghan O'Donnell services. I think they'll go back to trying to get the likes of Conor Callan, see is he interested, see can they get anything going there, and just kind of put a few cards in front of him and see what develops. But definitely securing the services of Eoghan O'Donnell is a vital thing to do, because if you lose a player of his calibre, it'd be like losing, to be honest, a Mike Casey from Limerick, a Dahi Burke from Galway. You just can't afford that.
Yeah. What's realistic for Dublin over the 3 seasons? I guess Anthony Daly's tenure is probably the yardstick when you look at an outside manager coming in and having success and winning a Leinster and getting to an All-Ireland semi-final. Is that realistic for them given the rest of the shake-up in Leinster currently? I
don't think it's realistic in year 1. I think there's 2 very, very contrasting styles of management. I think Anthony Daly is built very much off emotion and getting the most out of the player and connecting them to the supporters and whatnot, and seeing kind of maybe a bit more heart than head, where I think Micheal is kind of a good mix, whereby he's very methodical, very they're tactical orientated, very, very skill based. And I think if what Micheal will put in is more of a long-term plan than a short-term plan. So what's a realistic target for them? I think that if he contested Leinster final in his first year and got into the knockout stages of the Ireland Championship, that's not a bad season, to be honest. I know people, let's say, with Dublin's population and with the amount of players they have in their clubs and whatnot, that mightn't be the the level they want to get at, just the level they want to get at. They want to exceed it. Everyone wants in Ireland, but as I said, it's over 84 years since they won Ireland. So you have to be realistic and kind of really understand the project that's at hand here. It's a big task for Micheal. I think he'll need the whole 3 years. Well, I think he'll need every bit of it to try and build something, because what's there at the moment is good. It's fine. You know what I mean? You'll be contesting and you'll be participating in the championships. But in terms of real serious contending, he's going to have to build more, bring in 20s, bring in the minors. He's going to work closely with Shane O'Brien to try and get the 20s competing heavily in the championship, and see can they get some new players in there and build for next year and build for the year after, etc. So it's a big task. Look, it's a big task, but I think, in my honest opinion, if there was anybody nationally that should choose to pull out that job, in a high profile job because it's the capital, it'd be him.
Yeah, it's a reasonable gap they have to close too. Like if we were to take Kilkenny as the yardstick within the province of Leinster right now, Dublin were well outplayed in the 2 games they played against Kilkenny this year, both in the league and also in the round robin. Yeah,
and it was never a question of, they weren't outplayed because of strength, or fitness or physique. They were outplayed because of tactical nous and skill level. That's how they're played, and that usually comes down to the capability of the player, the individual, which then feeds into the capability of the team. So that's the big challenge. Like obviously everyone will be the same or very close to the same fitness and strength, you would imagine, but getting that team ticking, whereby the players best abilities feeds into the team to feed into their best abilities can contest. That's a big challenge, you know. And I just personally don't see it like, but like, obviously he's not going to go up there and just be, you know, a cog in the wheel of a championship. And not, he wants to contest. He's a winner, and like I can guarantee he's been itching to get back into the county championship, and I can also guarantee you he's been approached by other counties. I don't have it firsthand, but I would strongly assume Waterford were in touch, you know, because if you know that you're looking for an inter-county manager and Micheal Donoghue is available, you're going to get in touch with him. So for him to choose the Dublin project, it's a big vote of confidence in him also. So I think it's mutual. It's they source Micheal, and he I suppose accepts the responsibility and accepting the task. So they have a lot of work to do. But as I said to you, and I'll repeat myself, he's the best man for it.
When we went on the August break with the Hurling Pod, we left it kind of on a bit of a cliffhanger what was going to happen with Kilkenny. Subsequently, Derek Ling was then appointed. And at the time, you were fairly convinced that Henry Shefflin was going to stay with Galway. Even if Kilkenny had gone to approach him, he wasn't going to walk away from that project after 1 year and get into a Leinster final and get into an All-Ireland semi-final. Were you happy to see him stay around for a second season then?
I was personally delighted. I just think it's very hard for a manager to implement everything over the course of 1 year, because I just think it's very difficult to try and even grasp a full understanding of the county, to try and get to know every player that's there. There could be a couple of gems that you might know in a club championship, and you might need 2 club championships or 3 club championship seasons to see can you dig out any new players. So I'm happy. I just think there's a level of continuity for the players there. Like, they've gone through a couple of managers in the last couple of years, so it's nice for them to be able to come back into a season whereby they're familiar with Henry and Richie and all the guys, and try and build on what they did last year. Last year was it was up down the stages. They won games and performed admirably in most of their games, the Leinster final being an obvious blip, but then they finished topped off the year, albeit they got defeated, but topped off the year with a great performance against Limerick, and almost pipped them. Didn't pip them, but almost did. And that just culminated in all the work that they did in the year previous. Like, so I'm happy, I'm content, and I'm wishful. Like, that I keep thinking back, like, the only county that has had a successful Ireland manager is your own county, Will, in Michael Bond and, let me see, Eamon Cregan 94. So like, I'm hoping that we can just kind of break the trend a small bit and get one step further. So it's a big challenge for us also. Yeah,
because I think the semi-final performance and the Leinster final were pretty chalk and cheese in the end. Like, the Leinster final, Galway were so wasteful and seemed really off it that night as well. We talked about how the puckouts were an issue, but the shot selection was maybe even more of an issue, and they just kind of gave away frees that allowed Kilkenny to win the game reasonably limply, while they went and had a right good go at this excellent Limerick team in the All-Ireland semi-final. I think they finished the year in a decent position in the end.
They did, and I just think they were quite reactive in the Leinster final, where they were just looking at Kilkenny and seeing what would they do, and then try and nullify that, as opposed to what they did against Limerick, where they were extremely proactive, took the game to Limerick, took them on big time. Obviously they went down a couple of points, then got a goal after half time, and then really stuck into Limerick for the remainder of the game. And they'll look back, and I think they'll have regrets as well. Regrets probably a strong word, but they'll see opportunities where they had a couple of wides and they didn't take them. A small bit more composure, and you execute it better, and who knows, the result could be different. And we often talk about the Limerick, last 5-10 minutes, whereby they're so cool and calm, and they just stuck to their basics, stuck to their same processes, the word you'd often hear, and then ground out the result. So, as you said, chalk and cheese performances, and like, what we're looking for as Galway people, we want the semi-final performance replicated every day, because what frustrates us so much, and don't get me wrong, I was part of this as a player as well, and it should wreck your head on the day as well, is that you go out against, for example, a Leinster final Kilkenny, play poorly, and then go against Limerick and play excellent. And you're saying there's such vast differences in performances. Why can't we get that level of consistency every day, like we have against Limerick, and produce it across the board? And if you do that, like, you're more than a serious contender. You're a very, very high challenger to Limerick. That's a big challenge for Henry, is trying to get that consistency. I think over the period of maybe 16, 17, 18, that consistency was there, which you were kind of going out expecting to win every game, regardless of who the opposition was. So I'd love to see that come back into Galway's armoury a bit, whereby they go out, regardless of any league game, championship game, they're expecting to win, because they're producing consistent performances across the board.
Can you ever put your finger on why that consistency might not be there? Because we were talking about this last night about Manchester United and Liverpool, where Manchester United looked awful against both Brighton and their game away from home, but particularly away from home against Brentford, just a few days before they play Liverpool. And straight away you would assume the way United were playing, they're going to get wiped by Liverpool on Monday just gone. And yet they put in a totally different performance. Like, as a player, can you ever kind of put your finger on that? Because, like, you don't go out to play badly in any game. And in the cases you talked about there, you're talking about 2 big games, the Leinster final, Leinster semi-final, an All-Ireland semi-final, and 2 totally different performances.
Yeah, I just think it's like an awful lot of it is the top 6 inches. Well, an awful lot of it is mentality. Like if you're prepared for, I suppose if you're coming from an underdog position, you're expected obviously to lose, and you're kind of nearly your back is up a small bit. You're being challenged as a team and as men. Let's say that you're being put down by opposition straight away, and I suppose the general consensus out there is you're going to lose. That just brings a bit more. You know what I mean? And it's mixing that fire with obviously the skills you have that produce these big performances. And whereas when the good teams, really good teams, can carry the favourites tag really well. So Limerick carry it excellently. You know, Liverpool and Man City have carried it for an awful long time. You know, all the big teams have done it, and I just don't know to Galway have they carried the favourites tag well in the last number of years. But it's I just think when we produce a bad performance, it's a combination of things. First of all, it starts off where we're not mentally in the right space. I just don't think we're ready to go after. You know, it's a killer be killed mentality you have to have nowadays in inter-county hurling, and sometimes I just think we wait. We wait to see if we're going to be attacked, and if we're not, then we'll go attack. But if we are, we're kind of going, oh geez, you know, a small bit where you're trying to be reactive in game, which then is too late. I think every day is a battle nowadays, and I just think if you've got 15 hurlers in any jersey that could have a Roy Keane mentality whereby they treat every game as the same, they treat every game with the same level of importance, the same aggression, the same effort level, you know, you'd have a much better performance across the board.
Right, what about Waterford then, having a Davy Fitzgerald mentality over the next few years? Because I'm assuming that's largely why Waterford County Board wanted to appoint him. During the year, I think we all got sucked into the idea that Waterford had an incredible panel. They'd just come out of playing some wonderful hurling during the league, and then it crumbled in the Munster Championship. Yeah. Is putting a bit of, I don't know, Davy grit, winning mentality, says himself, he's won everywhere he's gone. Is that why Waterford have appointed him?
He's won everywhere he's gone. He's won some things everywhere he's gone to a certain extent.
Oh, right. I'm not going to advocate for Dave Fitzgerald here, but he won Waterford their last Munster Championship that they've won. He won an All-Ireland title when he went in with Clare. He won the Leinster with Wexford when he was with them as well. He's won multiple titles across schools and third level. Like his medal collection's impressive.
It's impressive, yeah. Across third level, our teams were stacked. Be honest, we had an embarrassment of riches. We had numerous all-stars. So when you say he's won, I think he's picked good teams and associated himself with good teams.
That's a skill in itself, though. You could make the same argument about Pep Guardiola.
Absolutely, I'm not trying to piss in his parade in any way, but I just don't think, like, will he make a huge difference? Like, what percentage of improvement do Waterford need on this year's performances to challenge? Again, I keep using Limerick. They need 50%, 60% on what they produced in the last couple of games. And does he bring that? I don't know. I don't think so. You know, when he last won with Clare, let's say, he had someone like a Paul Kinnerk who does bring that kind of improvement over longevity with training methods, you know, with game models, etc. Like, that's what you get. And I just wonder, is that what's going to be implemented into Waterford? I don't know. I look at it. I'm interested to see how this all pans out, because Waterford, we've associated Waterford with being very fit, very strong, very aggressive. They've great players, that's obvious. You know, they've great players, but just can they piece it all together under the tutelage of Davy from a tactical perspective? You know, because as I said to you before, every team will have the same level of fitness and, you know, marginal differences in skill, let's say, when you get to the top levels. But tactically speaking, let's say, and in-game management is that there? And I just don't know, you see. And obviously, we've seen before, Will, where teams that he takes over, there's an initial kick. You know, there's an initial kind of reaction whereby it's fresh. It's obviously a new manager, let's say, it's a new style, so he raises them up through just sheer will and sheer intent, and his man-management methods. You know, he nearly brings out more in the players than they'd expect from themselves. So I think this year you'll see a kick from Waterford. Will they go all the way? I'd have to say it'd be very difficult for me to say they will. I can't see it.
Do the methods, because you know this intimately, do the methods start to wear off after a while? Is that why there can be a dip?
Yeah, over a period they do, yeah. Like, you just get sick to your teeth them. Straight up, like, you know. Like, there's only so much. I think modern day players, they can take so much emotional communication. What I mean by that is, if I shout at you, Will, to run faster, they can take only so much of that, right? What players crave nowadays is information how to improve, and sometimes running and shouting doesn't exactly do that. You know, you want, and the best coaching is obviously done off the pitch, whereby there's little messages sent on how to improve, a little tactical issue. You know, maybe it could even be a life management situation whereby you're trying to manage your work, manage your wife, kids, whatever it is, to say, all that feeds into management style. And I just think the tactic of constant roaring, shouting, you know, etc., that just wears off a player after, you know, a year, maybe into the second year. It's like, okay, if we're getting better, what's different, how are we going to change, how are you going to coach me? Coach me. That's what players want from a coach. Coach me. You say, because you can shout at me, the supporters will shout at me, my parents will shout at me, but coach me. And that's the challenge.
The raw materials are good though, and even if he wants to deploy maybe a different system to the way that Liam Cahill was managing them over the last few years, and in all likelihood, I think even in the interview he did with WLR, he was saying that he might be a little bit more conservative. He might drop back a second sweeper. He has left all these options open. But we've got very intelligent players there, like Tadhg de Búrca. If Conor Prunty is fit again, there's possibly the players there to implement exactly the system he wants to play, and to play a nice short passing game as well.
Yeah. There is and conservative. If he's talking about a second sweeper, one sweeper is okay, two sweepers is just completely defending. His games are high up. They're high fitness levels. Speed, a very similar model to what Liam Cahill has been doing. It's like if you looked at the two teams, Waterford obviously and Wexford in years previous, and they're going well. They had very similar styles whereby they dropped in a sitting, a holding 6, they could say, or a holding 9, and then run attack, and then focusing on a couple of big players up front to do major damage. That's what Liam Cahill had. So I think maybe he's picking up in a better position where he probably retrieved the Wexford squad. So I don't think you'll see too many dissimilarities from what Liam Cahill produced. There'll probably be minor tweaks and changes in how they operate on game day. But again, I just believe that they'll get to a certain level. They have the clientele there, and I just think they need to form a more structured game plan whereby they nearly go on a 15 on 15 and then try and utilise their best players in the best positions, because Waterford are stacked with players. If you're to see, and this was so head-wrecking to us in the podcast was we looked at them after their league form, and we looked at them up after the Tipperary game and then into the Limerick group game in the Munster Championship, and you're saying, yeah, they've got the ingredients here to really go and challenge Limerick, and then they just petered out. That's a mental question. And that's a huge question to have over an inter-county team, because if you've got all the physical skills, great, but when you dip off and basically fall off a cliff, that's a serious mental question, and that's a big task to them.
I get the feeling on a final note for you when it comes to getting ready for the next year in the inter-county season, that with all of this kind of flux and change, and even like Galway running into the second year of a project, and all the other major teams have been changing management now, and whoever would have thought that we would have been chatting about Brian Cody stepping away and a new management team in there in Kilkenny, Cork changing, Tipperary changing, Waterford changing, Wexford only into the second year of a project under Darragh Egan as well. Is this really set up to be very difficult for anyone to actually challenge Limerick next year? Because Limerick have just got such continuity, and even when you're reading in the paper about guys who are travelling away for the rest of this year, or players who might not be available, it seems there's entire buy-in from a Limerick panel who are already a bit of a distance ahead of the chasing pack anyway.
They are, and they're quite a distance. And I know, we look at the likes of Kilkenny, the Galways, the Corks, and we can say that they can, with the right mix and with the rub of the green, that they can challenge Limerick. But Limerick have this thing where they have continuity, and they have a serious winning mentality, attitude, and they're very humble. So they've got this great mix, that you see in a successful team. And when you consider the domination, which is what they've done, four titles in 5 years or so, to say, that's what domination. That's what Barcelona have done. That's what Man City can do. That's what the New England Patriots can do. So it's very, very hard to stop that train wheel, and so if you have people who are chopping and changing positions, management positions, players chopping and changing, retirement, etc., from different counties, all that feeds into, not being as I suppose, how would you say, as good as Limerick, straight up, you know what I mean? Because everything has to go well. We've often spoke about in the podcast, Will, how difficult it is to win. Everything has to go well for you. You have to prepare fierce well on and off the pitch. You have to play very well, get some luck, get your big players to play well, get all your matchups correct, tactics correct. And I think just Limerick have it down to a fine art now. It's like we've often said, they just always have enough. Whatever people throw at them, whatever teams throw at them, a different system, a different matchup, they just always have the answer. So when you mix that with flipping teams who have some disjointed performances through management changes, etc., it's hard to look past Limerick, and here we are still in August. So I know we're looking into our crystal ball here for 12 months' time, but again, if you were to say Limerick for Ireland next year, I don't think anyone would disagree with you.
Yeah, look, I think the scary thing about it too is the fact that they can put back in a two-time hurler of the year in Cian Lynch, who they realistically only had for a few minutes this year because of what happened with his injury, and yet they were able to overcome every challenge without the guy who has been so key, and as effectively the guy that pulls the strings for the team. But when you've got just such winners across every line of the field, and you've got someone like Gearóid Hegarty who can again put in a massive All-Ireland final performance, you're just putting Cian Lynch back in to make that team even better.
Yeah, like I think because Limerick have performed so well in his absence, we kind of get we get distracted as supporters and as neutrals watching the game, because if this was our own county, if you look to if I give you an example of Kilkenny, and you took TJ Reid out of the Kilkenny team, or you took an Adrian Mullen over it, I think you'd see a decline in their performances. It's the same way with Galway. If you took out a Conor Whelan, or you took out a Dahi Burke, not Dahi Burke, but Conor Whelan, Cathal Mellon, you'd see a big decline. We didn't see any decline in Limerick. That's worrisome. So when you add him back into the mix, and Peter Casey, don't forget too, when he gets like a club championship and a league into himself, like you've got another All-Star coming in there. So you've got multiple All-Stars returning to a team that's already dominated the championship. That's frightening. And who knows what they're going to produce. And I'm looking forward to see who doesn't make the team next year. Because like they had a super performance in the final. They'd man of the matches all over the park. And even from lads you wouldn't expect every now and then. So when you introduce Lynch and Casey into that mix up again, they have an embarrassment of riches as well.
Well, look, we joked about it, and you were even laughing about it as well, because on OTB AM, it was like Dermot Burns came down to have his breakfast, and you were openly saying, like, Galway 2017, you enjoyed the few days afterwards. Oh, yeah. You've got Burns sitting there with a bowl of fruit on OTB AM, and he's talking, like, you've got lads like Eoghan, I think the week afterwards was on the show, and he was talking about the fact that they were already looking at video analysis from the All-Ireland final before even going back in with their club. Like, that to me, now, eventually you could burn out. That sounds really intense. But on the other side, if you're the opposition, you're hoping that they're half joking here.
Joking, yeah.
They could be trying to spook someone, Skehill. Like
I was going to use a word there, but I can't use it. I call BS on that, right? Yes, the fruit bowl, fair enough. I'll give them that. That's evidence you can see right in front of you. But look at a video analysis. Like there's, enjoy your victory. Are you really actually looking at video analysis? I don't know. Maybe they'll come out now and they'll say yes, we actually were. Fair enough if they were, but God, that just sounds so surprising to me. That's just a different level. I don't even know is that even required. When you're looking at video analysis the week after a final, come back into club championships. Jeez, like what did they analyse? We won the game. Do you know what I mean? Like we won the game and we won it well, I say, for a finish. So with big performance from everyone. So I don't know what they're analysing. Themselves maybe, but part of me thinks, that there's a bit of propaganda where they put out there, and maybe other teams looking at it and going, Jesus, this is what we have to do now, and next thing they go and burn themselves out some other way. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, it's the Cold War effect. Do you think if Limerick are already so far ahead, and Connacht and Kiley are already telling them, like, maybe you were a bit off in some parts of the game, and they're analysing that before they even come back in after the break, we have to do that bit more, and we're going to have to train that bit harder, and the minute December comes around, we're going to have to be really at top pace for the league. Like this year we saw Limerick, I wouldn't say relax, but definitely they ease themselves into the year a little bit.
But do you not think that the same thing will happen again, whereby they'll win at the club championships and they'll probably have a holiday at the latter end of the year, they'll probably return training after Christmas into January again, and so we might see something similar whereby the league, I won't say they plateau, but they start off at a level and then they actually don't start to incline until the latter end of the league into the championship. I don't know that they treat the league with much importance at all, so I think you could see something very similar. That's why it's so surprising to me when I hear about video analysis, because it's obvious that their methods are working. So I know everyone pointed at the league, and I was too, and they were saying their performances are quite poor. Some of their individual performances are poor, but they won the championship and went undefeated and won it comfortable enough, you could say, to a certain degree. So what they've been doing in years previous is categorically working. So I think you'll see them in the Bahamas again in December, and they won't come back training until January, and they get the ball rolling again.
Yeah, and if Paul Murphy's correct, you probably Sean Finn on the slopes somewhere around Barcelona, doing a bit of skiing as well, along with the Kilkenny hurlers around that time of year.
That man has more holidays than you and me put together.
Well, there you go. We're trying to get the money together for Paul Murphy to afford him for season 2 of the Hurling Pod. Before you go, I will have to ask you, what was on your breakfast plate then, Skehill, after 2017?
I'd be straight up, I didn't eat. I was too sick from the night before. So I just went straight to the bar. That was it. Hey, look, this show requires honesty. I'll give you honesty.
Right, recovery of a different type after 2017. Understandable when you had to wait nearly 3 decades to lift the Lee McCarthy and breaking that streak and bringing it across the Shannon. Skehill, great to catch up with you as always.
Cheers, Will. Thanks, bud.